Wes Goldberg, two things at the top of the show here. One thing, happy birthday to my dad who watches our show on YouTube and tells people in his neighborhood to subscribe to the Just Basketball Show. So shout out to Ivor Manning Sr., a real legend.
A legend. Shout out.
Legend. Shout out to my dad. Cold open question, though. It's 15 years. We're recording this on the 8th. This episode comes out on the 9th. But on the 8th was the 15-year anniversary of the decision. 15 years it's been, and one of the most important, top 5 most important, 3 most important, whatever moments in the NBA of the last 15 to 20 years. Wes Goldberg, I ask you, as someone who is a Heat guy, I'm a Cavs guy. I think there's no better two people than us to talk about this together. Where were you? What were you doing on the day of the decision?
I was home. It was summer. I was working at the time at a summer camp. So I remember I was at home. I was watching the decision in the living room of my parents' house, and I got so excited that the next day I walked into summer camp and I spent the entire morning outlining, diagramming basketball plays to whoever would listen and watch about what the Heat could do with Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and Chris Bosh. I was over the moon.
I was at Cedar Point, which for people who don't know is a theme park in Ohio. It's like one of the biggest, best theme parks in the country. I'd finagled this trip with a friend who was in like a Baptist high school, who's like a Baptist art church group. I had no real interest in going to church, but I wanted a free trip to Cedar Point, so I did it. Watched it in a sports bar that I'm not really sure I legally should have been allowed into, but the amount of depressed people on like a rainy day at a theme park, it's tough. When you're that age, it would have been like 8th or 9th, something like that. It was like 15 years ago. No, I couldn't have been that old. I'm 32, 15.
Feels like that would have brought the vibe down, though.
Not a good vibe. The bus ride home back to the church I picked up my parents was not great.
Was there a lot of praying that day, or was there a lot of people
not for
just
me.
Did a lot of people leave and just assume that God didn't exist anymore?
I mean, I think they probably fueled a lot of atheism. I was convinced at that time, Wes. I remember reading this in the Plain Dealer that like LeBron had filed the paperwork to change his number to 6, and he only had to do that if he was staying. So I was like convinced he was staying.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of signs that he was staying. I think, didn't the Cavs think he was staying until the decision?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, they fired Mike Brown in an effort to like keep him.
Mm-hmm.
15 years. It feels like it's been, and LeBron's still kicking and doing weird LeBron stuff. Still here. Mm-hmm. Nothing's really changed. Except he doesn't do it on television anymore. He does it via statements and probably on the Mind the Game podcast at the point. He just modernizes with the media as time goes on. It's LeBron James. Right on today's show, we're going to do best and worst of our free agency moves. We're going to do a little draft. We're going to start with best. We'll go to worst. That's coming up today on the Just Basketball Show. Let's go. What is up, everyone? Chris Manning, Wes Goldberg here on the Just Basketball Show, your twice-weekly show covering all things hoops. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, review on your podcast platform of choice, and hit that notification bell. And as always, we're powered by our friends at BetMGM.
If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code JustBasketball, and you'll get up to $1,500 on a first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android. Sign up using the code JustBasketball. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use the bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply.
Wes, people get your full thoughts on this on the Locked On Heat podcast, and I don't think it's going to come up. But the one bit of news is that the Miami Heat did trade for Norman Powell, and John Collins, of all people, is on the Clippers now, which is weird. Kevin Love probably going to get bought out by Utah. I'm going to, again, people can go check out your full thoughts with David Ramil over on Locked On Heat, but can you give us 30 to 60 seconds on why Norm Powell is a good trade for the Heat?
Well, first of all, you got to look at what it cost the Heat, which was next to nothing. Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson, and you go get a guy who a lot of people were trying to get onto the All-Star team in the Western Conference last year. A lot of people thought Norm Powell was maybe the best Clipper before Kawhi Leonard returned to the team in the middle of the season. So you get that guy, a high-end rotation player, I guess at worst, coming off of a career season, for Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson. You essentially swapped two guys who are at the very end of your rotation for somebody who's likely to start on opening night. And that's just a good trade every time you do it, especially when it doesn't cost you any sort of long-term flexibility. Powell's on an expiring contract now. He is eligible for a 3-year extension. Maybe Miami goes ahead and offers that to him, but he's eligible now through the end of the season, so they don't have to rush to do it. If they don't get something done by the end of the by the beginning of the season, I expect that they'll just go into the year, wait and see if he's a good fit, and if he's still on the team after the trade deadline, perhaps they decide to sign him to an extension then, or they let him walk away. But 41% three-point shooter on more than 7 three-point attempts per game last year, averaged nearly 22 points per game. This is somebody who can pair with Tyler Hero in the backcourt, and it's not the best backcourt in the league, but it's a very formidable one. And just when you're able to do what the Heat just did, and you get better, and it doesn't really cost you much of anything in terms of assets or long-term flexibility, you just do it. And in the Eastern Conference, there's like this big pack of 4, 5, 6 teams that kind of just feel like they're all in that like play-in middling mix. An addition like this can set you apart. So we'll see what happens.
Did lose Kevin Love's Instagram posting, but you can still enjoy that, and hopefully he continues it. Really good one from the reservoir for him when he got traded. All right, well, let's do best and worst. Let's start with the best. I'm going to give you the first pick on best.
Should we explain what this segment is?
Yeah, it's true. You are good at reminding me to slow the fuck down and explain. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back and forth, and we're gonna draft our best free agency off-season moves. Top 3 teams of 3 for each, and then we're gonna do the same thing for the worst. We're gonna come with our own rankings. We have, I think, our own lists, but we're gonna just bounce around a bunch of moves we liked and explain why we like them so much. Now we've had a little bit of time to process them.
All right, so you're giving me first pick for best.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go. I wasn't expecting to get the first pick. I kind of thought you would get it.
I'm being a gracious host. Yeah.
I'll start easy. I'll go Houston, grabbing Kevin Durant. It's the best player to change teams. I'm not gonna overthink this. I actually thought Phoenix got a pretty good haul for Kevin Durant, all things considered. You get the 10th pick in this draft. You get Dylan Brooks. You get Jalen Green, who, inconsistent, but a good young player with some upside there, and maybe you could flip him down the road for some more stuff. Dylan Brooks is a high-end rotation level player and a two-way player, something that Phoenix desperately needed, and they used the 10th pick on a guy that I don't think a lot of people thought was going to be there at 10 in Maliwatch. So far, it's been a very good offseason, and it's all because they were able to trade Kevin Durant and get the return that they did. But I'm talking more about Houston here. You get the best player to change teams in the league this year, really the only sort of star to move around so far. And it only cost you the 10th pick in the draft, which you weren't all that motivated to use. Jalen Green, who you were pretty much done with. Dylan Brooks, who you don't really need as much. And then you go ahead and replace him with Dorian Finney-Smith anyway afterwards. And just addresses a ton of Houston's needs. Hey, Rockets, you can't score in the half court. You know who's awesome at that? Kevin Durant. And it doesn't feel like he's going to get in the way of any of the young players. In fact, I think one of the most underrated parts of the Kevin Durant trade is going to be his influence on young players like Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. I think he's going to be a great role model for them to learn from, and that could have huge effects going down the next 10 years in Houston. If you've got Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. and these other guys, Reed Shepard and all these guys, learning from Kevin Durant and kind of seeing that kind of work ethic up close and in person every single day. So home run of a deal for Houston, and they still have everything that they need to compete and to potentially make another move if that's something that they want to do.
Yeah, I think this was my number one as well. I mean, I think you get Kevin Durant, you keep the core of the team. Collectively, like some of the little stuff, I still kind of wonder, like, did you need to do the Capella thing? Was there like little things you could have done that maybe were a little different? But some of the reporting coming out in conjunction with the Durant thing about the Jabari Smith contract being like a roller coaster contract where there's going to have like another window to add big salary and like keep this team kind of rolling. I think it's really, really good work by the Rockets and their whole entire front office, and getting Kevin Durant to problem solve for the most important thing that can take this team from like here to way up here while Dylan Brooks was important for the defense, but I think Van Vliet would matter more for the next iteration of the team. You have Amen Thompson. You have Jabari Smith. Like, you kept all the other random vets like Jayshawn Tate and all of that stuff. Like, you're in a really good spot. And, oh, by the way, like, maybe we can get more to Reed Shepard this year and kind of start the transition of Van Vliet. Like, this team is so set up for success. The Durant thing was a really great all-in move, especially in a World West where Giannis did not come on the market. This was the next best thing they could have done, and I think they had to do it.
No doubt about it. Your pick.
And this cost them less, so that's a good thing. This would be my number 2, so I'm happy about this. I'm going to go with the Denver Nuggets, flipping Michael Porter Jr., and a pick for Cam Johnson, and also getting Bruce Brown in the same thing. They have retooled themselves as a deeper championship-ready team in seconds. Now, we'll see what exactly happens with Valanciunas. If he does end up ending up in Europe, that puts him in a tough spot. There's not a great way to replace Valanciunas on the market. But you got Bruce Brown, who will be back to something resembling the title-winning Bruce Brown with Jokic. And you got a cheaper player who I think I like better than Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Johnson. You made a Nikola Jokic team more of a title contender and did better GMing than you did in the last several years under Calvin Booth. Denver Nuggets nailed this offseason. For me, it's them and OKC and Houston at the top of the West next year, and I think that's a tier of their own.
It's such a great call. And, I think I've seen some people criticize the trade from the Denver's perspective. I know John Hollinger had a column on The Athletic about, hey, what could you have gotten if you would have shopped that distant first-round pick? That has a lot of value in the NBA because not a lot of people think that Jokic is going to be around that long. And if he's not, then Denver obviously post Jokic, I mean, they're going to be a mess. And so it's one of those sort of out there assets that now becomes one of those gold ticket assets if you're Brooklyn, now that you have it. And so Hollinger proposed basically like, hey, what could you have gotten if you would have just shopped that? You could have gotten a player way better than Cam Johnson. I see where he's coming from. I understand that Denver has fallen into this trap before of using draft picks to get off of salary time and time again. But this is just different because, I still don't really care about those picks. Yeah. I've got Jokic. I'm going for it right now. And, that's the past is the past. It's a sunk cost. I don't really care. All I know is that I'm not good enough right now. And this trade made me better. This trade to move off of Michael Porter Jr. and get Cam Johnson, who I don't think that he's got the highs that Michael Porter Jr. has in terms of the scoring and things like that, but he's as good as a 3-point shooter, maybe slightly worse, but still very good.
Probably less of like a heat check possibility.
Right, exactly.
More controlled.
And I know that his defense has slipped over the last couple of years, but he's also been playing for a lousy Brooklyn Nets team. I think the defense will get better. And by the way, I think his offense is going to get better. Michael Porter Jr., by the way, has the Jokic inflation tax.
Mm-hmm.
Cam Johnson's been playing with Cam Thomas, dog. Cam Johnson is going to look better than he ever has playing off of Nikola Jokic. And so, when it all kind of comes out of the wash, it might just look like, oh, Cam Johnson is pretty much the same player as Michael Porter Jr., maybe a little bit better. Michael Porter Jr., there's so many times where Jokic would get frustrated and even calling him out after playoff games and stuff about the lack of effort and losing focus and all these things. And that isn't stuff that Cam Johnson is known to do. And so I think even if you clean up those handful of possessions, across a week, that'll just make Jokic a little bit happier, which is, ultimately the most important thing. And then you've already nailed the biggest point here, which is that you did that, you saved a bunch of money, and that allowed you to go and add real NBA players to your roster. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a guy who you can come in, and if he's feeling it, great. If he's not, leave him on the bench. It's fine. Nobody cares. You add Bruce Brown, whose track record with Denver speaks for itself. You add Valanciunas, who it sounds like Denver is going to convince to stay here and play out his contract. You get a backup center for a year. That's huge. So it increased their flexibility in a way that really improved the team overall. That was the first domino. It's what makes it such a great trade, and it was a worthy number 1 pick. I almost considered it, but I ultimately went with Durant.
What's your next one?
So I'm trying to think of the trade that actually makes a difference. Trade or offseason move.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Clippers getting Brook Lopez for a few different reasons here. Number one, I know I'm talking about a backup center, but damn it, if he's not the best backup center in the NBA right now. And he's a guy who could start for you in a pinch if something were to happen to Zubac for some reason, which things don't typically happen to Zubac. The guy's built like a tank, but whatever. Turns an ankle, something happens. You're not going to slip. I love the idea of Zubac and James Harden sort of being stapled together in Ty Lue's rotation, and then Brook Lopez getting a lot of minutes with Kawhi Leonard. That to me makes a lot of intuitive sense. Kawhi does really well with those floor spacing types of fives, whether it was Serge Ibaka or Marc Gasol in Toronto. He just tends to play well with those kinds of guys. So and with Zoo, the drop off when he went to the bench was huge. So Brook Lopez can walk in, provide some rim protection, doesn't have to play a ton of minutes, which you think the production will just be better if his minutes are coming down a little bit, and provide something that Zoo doesn't in terms of the 3-point shooting, gives them a different look there. And it's the kind of move that I think can make a difference in the Western Conference. I don't have the Clippers at the top of the West, right? To me, it's still very much the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Rockets, and the Timberwolves as my top four, and I feel pretty good about that. But then you're getting into the Clippers, the Lakers, the Warriors, the Spurs, some of these other teams that are out there. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting some of these other ones, but you get the gist of it. This is the kind of thing that sets you apart in a playoff series. It's the kind of thing that sets you apart and adds a couple of wins during the regular season, which means a lot for seeding in the Western Conference. And the other reason I really like this, Chris, is because the other team that was rumored to be in on Brook Lopez and perhaps even be the leader to get Brook Lopez was the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And by the Clippers signing Brook Lopez, they made sure that the Lakers, A, didn't, and B, ended up with DeAndre Ayton. And I'm not trying to clown on Ayton. I think it's a major improvement over Jackson Hayes, and it's a good move for the Lakers. And it might end up being the better player long-term. But right now, Brook Lopez is the better player, and the fact that you were able to keep him away from the Lakers and bring him in-house, that's a huge part of this too. So I'll go Brook Lopez with my second pick.
I think it's a great one. I dinged it slightly on my big board. That was obviously a very scientific process because of the John Collins thing. I don't quite understand like why you traded Norm Powell if you were just bringing John Collins. Maybe it's a salary thing. Like maybe that's just kind of what it is.
So from my little bit of reporting that I did on this and just understanding of the whole situation, extension talks basically went nowhere with Powell. He wanted the extension coming off of a borderline all-star season. The Clippers do not want any caps. They want to preserve all their cap space after 2027 when Kawhi and James Harden come off the books. And Powell wanted the full 3-year extension. So that just wasn't going to happen for the Clippers. And once that happened, they were basically at a stalemate, and the Clippers had been shopping Powell for a couple of weeks now. And so they go get a guy like John Collins who doesn't expect that extension. And I actually like Collins quite a bit for them. And even with Powell, after they had acquired Bogdanovich, which was a sneaky good trade at the deadline last season, Powell became a little bit duplicative. I mean, he's a better version of Bogdanovich, but Bogdanovich is 75 to 80% of what Powell is without the worry about the extension there. So you flip Powell, you get Collins. Collins allows you to play Kawhi at power forward less. It lets you get into some bigger lineups. And as you've seen I think the Clippers are looking at Houston and OKC at the top of the conference, and Minnesota and Denver, and saying, like, we just got to be bigger. We got to get bigger. And Collins at least makes you physically bigger, even if he doesn't necessarily play that way all the time. He does make you physically bigger and allows Kawhi to play the 3 a little bit more.
Also sounds like, based on reporting from about half an hour before we started recording, that Beal's going to end up with the Clippers once he's waived or bought out of stretch from Clippers. And it's like you say, okay, resource allocation, we get 2 bigs in when we want to play bigger. We have another Zubac backup, even though he's been really durable. We don't have to play the rookie we got right away. We can really let him develop, and we can try to get more out of Beal than Phoenix did, and he's cost us probably very little because he's going to be making a lot of money leaving Phoenix. So I think there's some logic in roster construction there, and keeping the money fresh. I like this one. This is a good move. I don't know if I would have had it here because my next pick, Wes, you left it for me. It's the Atlanta Hawks, who I think have 2 different moves here I think you could have eligible. But it's getting the 2026 first-round pick from Joe Dumars in New Orleans.
Yep.
Just every time I think about it, I remain astounded. They got an unprotected first-round pick in what is considered a very good draft class by all accounts as of right now.
Yep.
and it's coming from a team with bottom 10 odds for the title, and whose franchise player is one of the most injury-prone, inconsistent players we've had in the NBA of the last 10, 15 years. This is about this feels about as much as any pick that you don't control based on your own stuff is predictable. This pick being like a really good pick just feels about as safe of a bet as you possibly could make. This was a heist, and it becomes a better heist the more and more I think about it. In an offseason for Atlanta, I really like. This is their best move, and I don't think it's a question.
Yeah, they go ahead and also add Kristaps Porzingis, add Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I agree with you. This is their best move.
And which I would have, if you wanted to draft that as like a different pick, if that's on your board, I think you could do it. I think that's fair.
So I'm not. I think to me, Atlanta, their offseason as a whole is very good. I don't know that any of these picks, like if we were going to do a top like 7, maybe one of them make it. But my next pick, I have more on the Hawks Pelicans trade, but I'm going to save that maybe for our next segment here. But
wonder who's coming up.
I'll go Orlando grabbing Desmond Bane here.
Yeah.
That was a nice nice piece of business for them. Just clean fit, elite 3-point shooter. Also just tremendous locker room guy, fits everything that the Orlando Magic talk about and stand for and want to be about. And I do think that this creates some potential issues salary cap wise down the road for them. I just don't see how they can get away with paying Paolo Banchero, who they just signed to a 5-year extension, max extension here. How they're going to get away with paying Paolo and Franz the max, and Desmond Bane something, and Jalen Suggs something each over $30 million a year. It's going to be a very expensive team pretty quickly, but they clearly think that their window is in the next couple of years, and they might be right. So it's a great trade for now. And yes, maybe they recruited some of those problems, but they can cross that bridge when they get there.
All right, my next one, last one of the Best West, is it's a move that I think I feel bad for the player to some degree, but for the team, it's worked really well, and that's Ty Jerome to the Memphis Grizzlies. This is like a really cheap deal for if he produces like he did in Cleveland or even like 90% of it, they got an absolute steal well under the mid-level for the next 3 years to be replace some of what Bane does, to be a secondary scorer, to be like an electric kind of off the bench spark plug for them. They got him at like a really, really good value in a world where costs of good players has just skyrocketed. They're paying Ty Jerome like not really a lot. He's making less than like an Isaac Okoro is next year. Or like some players that are just not exactly functional, good team playoff guys. There is, I think, more risk here than has been said, I think, in some of the analysis of this, just because this is 1 year of production, and he played for a coach that is really good at getting a lot out of guards in Kenny Atkinson and on a deep team. But the value of if this works and you can replicate some of that, you got a really, really good player for pretty cheap. And if it doesn't work, it's like, okay, that's a fairly tradable salary number. If you really needed to move it. It's not a big number where I think it's too hard to kind of flip it around for something similar if you needed to. So I really like this Ty Jerome to Memphis deal.
It's a great call. Ty Jerome is exactly the kind of player that just seems to work in Memphis. They always just do the best with these try-hard point guards, and he's exactly that. Can I give you an honorable mention?
Please.
Underrated move. OKC dumping Dylan Jones on Washington super early on June 28th is when they did it.
I forgot about this.
They moved Dylan Jones in a second-round pick to the Wizards to make sure that they were able to sign their rookie Thomas Sorber, who drops to them. Perfect pick. One of my favorite picks in the draft. Solves their center issue their backup center position long term. To me, I think it's a no-brainer. They still re-signed Jalen Williams. But this roster, man, is just full of guys, and Dylan Jones was the odd man out. And they don't wait around. Typical Sam Presti does his homework early, just like last summer where he signed Isaiah Hartenstein day one, made the trade for Alex Caruso early on, and then it was just like, yep, now we're done. And the Thunder are just done. Yeah. They're like, we're going to salary dump Dylan Jones. It costs us one of our million second-round picks. We literally don't care about it. And we do it early before some of these roster spots get filled. We just take care of our homework early. We get our guy. And now we're just watching Nikola Topic carve it up in Summer League.
He is the only reason I've watched any Summer League. Caring about the quality of Summer League is tough, but I was seeing some Topic highlights, And I was
Looks
like,
good, man.
and I just went and fired up like some chunks of game, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's just gonna be doing some disgusting stuff on League Pass for me next year.
Yep.
It's gonna be great. They're just unfair. That is just the
Mhm.
most unfair organization in the NBA, and it's not close.
They know how to do their work.
Let's go to worst. I'm gonna go first on this one.
Mhm.
Mine's LeBron James picking up his player option
So this is worse for the Lakers or for LeBron?
for LeBron. For the Lakers,
Okay.
probably too, but this is for LeBron. He clearly, like, with that statement, like, I don't think he really wants to be there. I think we kind of get that feeling. Every insider, West, that we read that's, like, at the national platform is, like, hinting at LeBron is, like, kind of wants to not be with the Lakers, that this is kind of going he wanted to go a certain way. They didn't make a move to get him the kind of center he likes. They got Ayton.
Mm-hmm.
I know he said he does this, he goes there every offseason, but he was at the Cavs practice facility, which I'm sorry, LeBron is the most intentional human being in the world. If he didn't want that photo to, like, someone didn't think someone could post it, I'm sure he would have done something about it. And tell me he could have access to, like, Savin St. Mary or, like, somewhere else that had more control. Like, he went to the Cavs facility. Like, that there's something to that. He doesn't need the money. He gave up his one path to, like, having utter control over what he could do for this next season of his career, which is maybe his last, maybe then the second to last, something like that. It's at most. It feels like second to last. So why'd you pick up the option? You don't need the money. Why? Like, what? I think it's hard for him to get leverage here unless it's just a huge stink. And it's hard for a player at his age with his many minutes, as great as he is all time, as great as he still is, to get that control. So he gave that up, and it feels like he's not going to be happy with it. I get it's a lot of money, but you're LeBron James.
It's when player empowerment goes wrong, perhaps. And this is a tough. You're absolutely right. If he wanted to just win, I think that there would have been a way to spin it. Now, I have a lot of theories about why the statement came out when it did, the way that it did, and all these things. But part of me just wonders that, the statement reads something about, essentially it boils down to LeBron James wants to win above all else, and the Lakers aren't good enough for him to win a championship. And it's like, okay, if that were true, then you wouldn't have picked up the player option, to your point, Chris. And, there was a world a few years ago where LeBron probably could have opted in and still forced the trade, right? We've seen James Harden do this. We've seen other players do this. But this was misreading the market for a player and representation that typically does not misread the market, right? But look around. It is really hard to move $52 million these days. And it is really hard to, by surprise, make room for that kind of money. And it's really hard for a team that can win a championship to send out $52 million and still have a roster capable of winning a championship. So if LeBron really all he cared about was winning a ring, getting another ring, he would have opted out and he could have signed for the minimum somewhere. And that I think that would have been fine. This would not have been Karl Malone joining the Lakers in 2003. I don't think it would have been Gary Payton chasing rings for two different teams at the end of his career. It's LeBron freaking James. He's still one of the best 10 players in the league. Whatever team he goes to might not be built around him, but he will have a huge impact on whatever team that is. LeBron joins any team in the Eastern Conference, I would argue that team immediately becomes the favorite in the Eastern Conference. Not the Wizards, but you know what I mean. So, yeah, to me, I think it's a great call. I think it's a great pick, and it might be the best bad move so far. Is him. It could still work out, right? He could turn around and be like, you know what? I misplayed that. I'll take a buyout for next to nothing. I'll give up the money. Just buy me out for $1 million, and I'll give it up. Like, he could still do that, but I just don't see that happening because LeBron's never done that before.
No. If there's ever a time, it's now.
He's always believed that he could have the money and his way. And I don't know that the market works that way anymore.
Yes, 100% agree.
All right, let's talk about these stupid Pelicans. I've done so much on this dumb Pelicans trade that I don't want to go even more into it, but it is absolutely the worst trade that any move. It's the worst move this offseason by far. The Pelicans moving up 10 spots in the NBA draft to take Derek Queen, and in doing so, giving up an unprotected pick in 2026. An unprotected pick that is the best swap between Milwaukee and New Orleans, two teams that could be very bad next year. That's not one chance. That's two chances for this pick to probably end up in the top 5 next season. It is a huge misread of where you are at as a team in New Orleans. I can't believe that Joe Dumars did this. I can't believe that Troy Weaver signed off on this. They better believe if Derek Queen does not come out, he's getting Jokic type of comparisons and Patrick Ewing stuff. He better look like Patrick Ewing and Jokic combined day one for me to like this trade.
He better be Cooper Flag for Rookie of the Year. Like he better just be like, did they get the steal of the century since Giannis?
Right.
Like it's got to be that.
He has to look like Wembanyama did as a rookie. Like this is crazy. I like Derek Queen fine. I kind of feel like it's not going to work out because of Joe Dumars' draft history. It's not great. We've talked about it before. Chris, I've given it a lot of thought. I think this is worse than the Luka trade.
I think obviously like the Mavs have benefited from like winning the lottery and the fact that they're going to like get Anthony Davis with a fixed retina, Kyrie off an ACL and Cooper Flag with a really good head coach is like not a bad place to be. Also wouldn't be surprised if at some point, because they signed Daniel Gafford, if they flip Derek Lively for something good. Wouldn't shock me if they went that route. Although it might be short-sighted. You might be right because they gave up more than they're ever going to get for the player.
I'm not condoning the Luka trade, but at least you got a bona fide all-star player back.
Yeah.
Like you got a player with a resume, a proven track record. You got something back for him. And you just gave up an unprotected pick in what is going to be a loaded draft. And I'm telling it's going to be in the top 5 unless they just get lucky in the lottery and it actually falls out of it.
If I could bet on this, like on this pick, I've never been more sure that like the Hawks are going to have like a top 3 pick next year because that just feels like what the universe is going to do.
And he did it for a guy who's never played a minute of NBA basketball. And even if he does end up being good and Pelicans fans, oh, you know what, you're being too hard on him. Derek Queen's really good. It's okay. The process was terrible. This is a horrible, horrible trade. It was bad process. It was bad management. I can't believe they did it after they traded CJ McCollum away for Jordan Poole. Who do they think Jordan Poole is? Did they think they just traded? Were they doing high fives? Like, oh my God, I can't believe
we got Steph
stole
Curry's
Jordan Poole.
They got Steph Curry's understudy, had to pull him out of a bad situation in Washington. When I don't care how good Queen ends up being, when the Hawks next year get one of Peterson, DeBansa, Cam Boozer, Nate Omnet, like one of these guys at the top of the draft, don't care. No, some of those guys are franchise guys, and this is like maybe like a guy that if he hits, it's like a top 5 guy in this class. But the ceiling.
Chances are those guys are not only going to be better as franchise guys than Derek Queen, which the stuff you just traded for, you do that for a franchise guy. Yeah, they're probably going to be better franchise guys than Zion Williamson.
Probably.
You're up.
By the way, see Carlos Boozer's going on a reality show on Bravo. Dating show. He's doing a dating show on Bravo. His quote his quote that I saw on Reddit was that I get a lot of women asking me about how I scored 21 points a game last season, but I want them to know the real me. And I said, who are these women that know how many points you scored last season, Carlos Boozer? Like when you were playing, who's like?
I'm sure it's on his Hinge profile.
His Raya, he's got to be like a Raya guy. He's
like that guy on Love Island who keeps talking about how he was a former basketball player.
Great cold open question. I'm going to tell you ahead of time next episode. Best NBA player that would be good on Love Island.
I'm glad you're telling me now because I need time to think about it.
Yeah, I do too. I need a couple days to think about this. All right, my next one. I'm going to go Dennis Schroeder for 3 years and $45 million for
I'm glad I have this on my list
Sacramento
too.
Kings.
Go ahead.
This sucks, man. The Kings are back in the wilderness, and I hate it. They gave $45 million guaranteed over 3 years to a point guard who's going to be in his like mid-30s by the end of this contract. I understand like you lost Malik Monk, you needed ball handling, you wanted Russ. I would rather just like give Russ 1 year for like $10 million instead of this. Like just give Russ and just say you had Russ for a year. But at this point, let Sabonis just be the hub of your whole thing. Let Malik Monk go. See if you can get more out of K&L. See if you can get more out of Keegan Murray. Just like embrace this next wave and understand that it's going to be rough. And you have Levine and DeRozan still. And like Dennis Schroeder for like more money than he's made in several years is the kind of move like a good team makes when they're just like, we got to spend now because we have a window. This is like a team that's going to finish 12th in the West next year, and they're spending a bunch of money on a guy that I don't see the vision quite at all. It's not that he's a bad player. Like, I think he's pretty good in Detroit. He's not a $15 million a year guy for the next 3 years on a team that already has very expensive ball handlers and has other guys that would rather just give stuff to, especially considering there was some stuff out there that they might be like open to trading Monk. And it was like, why are you trading Monk to like get a Schroeder? That does not make any sense to me.
Yeah, Schroeder's a fine player, but we've seen this movie before where a team thinks that he could be their starting point guard on a high caliber winning basketball team. He's not that. He's a good rotation guy off your bench, plays hard. We like Dennis Schroeder. But we've seen this before, and it doesn't work. How bummed was Sacramento that they didn't get Jordan Poole?
How many points per
Also, is there an earthquake going on in your apartment right now?
No, for some reason it's been the mic thing is shaking. I don't know why. It's tough. I'm just really fired up about Schroeder.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, okay. No, we don't have earthquakes in Cleveland. It's hot right now, but no earthquakes. How many points do you think like a game? I'm not even gonna go analytics with the West. Like would a Poole, Levine, DeRozan, Sabonis lineup? Like I don't give a shit who's like the 4 or the 3. Like whoever is the 5th guy. How many points per game? Like I think that's like 150 point a game defensive lineup.
It's not good. I'm gonna give you my next pick. I can't even. You made me sick. I don't even want to talk about that anymore.
I'm so sorry. The Kings had such a moment in the sun, and it's just like back to sucking.
It's unreal how quickly it all unraveled. Like it's
unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It feels like yesterday that De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis were on ESPN explaining their 2-man game and taking the Golden State Warriors down to the wire in the NBA playoffs and light the beam and all this stuff. And Mike Brown was winning Coach of the Year, and all of a sudden it's like, what happened? Doug Christie's the coach now?
Yeah.
Why do they have all the Bulls players? What happened?
When do you think they're training for Pat Williams?
Yesterday.
Sabonis for Pat Williams. Bulls are like,
yeah, I mean, the Bulls will probably have to throw in Zach Collins. They'll probably demand it.
It's like, can we get Buzelis?
Nope, they're not even going to ask for him. All right, my next pick.
Okay.
Portland trading real stuff for Jrue Holiday. What the hell was that?
This is so weird, man.
I'm prefacing this by saying I know that we're not allowed to say anything bad about Jrue Holiday, and I'm not saying anything bad about Jrue Holiday. We all love Jrue Holiday.
No, you've been tilted on this line for a while, though. It's like you've really wanted to uncork like your anti-Jrue Holiday sentiment, and you've been like, I know I'm not allowed, but I feel like now
because the media just talks about Jrue Holiday like, oh my God, he's so good, his brothers, all this stuff. It's like, whatever. The guy's 35 years old. Can we stop? When he signed that extension, everybody's great extension. I'm like, how was that a good extension? A 4-year extension paying him north of $30 million a year? How was that a good extension for a guy who's 34 years old and was already showing slippage? It was, well, that's what you do when you're coming off of a championship year. Do you? He was still under contract. You don't have to give him the extension. What else was he going to get this money? I think it was a stupid move by Boston. And for Portland to just bail him out of this by sending them Anthony Simons and second-round picks. Well, what were you doing?
The seconds are out of the deal now. Got reported yesterday. I don't know if you saw this. The seconds are out of the deal because of medical on Simon's side. Like, there was some stuff in the medical, so it's just like a swap now, and I still don't like it. Because Jrue Holiday also, like, I don't think we think he wants to be in Portland. Which is like...
And if they wanted him this bad, they could have had him 2 years ago.
But the whole
when
thing...
they literally had him.
The whole thing with Jrue is I think Portland is saying culture, tone setter, all that stuff, and I get that.
Yep.
That only really works if the guy is like cool with being on your team. If he is not happy about being where even if the paycheck is huge, the impact of that is just so much less.
That's what
he's not fully invested.
It's such a great point because that's what Fred VanVleet brought to Houston. Fred VanVleet signed there. He wanted to be there. He wanted to be that guy. Jrue Holiday is going from I was competing for a championship yesterday to now I'm with whatever this is. I'm playing in Portland where NBA players typically don't want to be, playing for a losing franchise in a stacked Western Conference. What? Like, what's going on there? So I think it's terrible. If you wanted the guy to be the mentor, fine. Do you have to be paying a mentor $104 million over the next 3 years. Why Portland is weirdly expensive. They didn't even shed the Jeremy Grant contract yet. And they lose Simons, who I think is a good player on an expiring contract, a guy that they could have probably traded for real stuff at the trade deadline. Instead of doing that, they just get saddled with the Jrue Holiday contract. And what really pisses me off is they bailed out Boston. They bailed Boston out with this.
This is why you're mad. This is why.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's all it is.
I'm honest. You're up.
It's the Bucks waiving and stretching Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
This is just dumb. This is just dumb. Like, your offseason as a whole is silly, but to, like, get a guy in Miles Turner who is good, but I think is probably on the lesser side of his career, and you're just paying Damian Lillard a bunch of money to go home and eating into your flexibility to make Giannis happy, not just this year, but the year after and the year after and the year after. You just, like, put yourself... Like, you tied your legs together before you started running the race. This is incredibly silly. I rather would have just like stretched. I rather would have just like bought him out and just ate it all and just get it over with sooner and just dealt Giannis. But like I don't understand this at all. I don't get why you just put in like such a hamper on your spending and a really cap strapped cash. Like, teams aren't spending in the same way, and it's hard to hit those aprons. You just cut into any flexibility you had with one of the best players ever, and I still just imagine this ends up with him wanting it to be in a different team in a year.
So I've been thinking about this, and I still think it's a dumb move and wildly desperate. But if I'm trying to see it from Milwaukee's perspective, they're thinking either if we don't do this, then we're going to lose Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have to pay Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
$50 million a year. If we do this, we could potentially keep Giannis. And if it doesn't work out and it's not enough to convince him to stay, then we're going to have to trade Giannis anyway. And if we're trading Giannis anyway, then who cares about $22 million of dead cap money on our books? We're going to suck. We're going to be rebuilding anyway.
Sure.
So from that perspective, I see it. It is incredibly desperate. I think the timing could have been a lot better. Again, I brought this up last week where I was like, well, if you were going to do this, wouldn't you have just done this earlier, re-sign Brook Lopez, and then use this money to go get Nickeil Alexander-Walker or something like that, and actually add to your roster as opposed to just sort of moving these pieces around and being somehow worse than you were last year.
Instead, your wings and your guards, it's like KP. You're hoping to get Chris Paul, Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent, Ryan Rollins. Like, that's your guards. That's not.
No, I mean the roster stinks. It's not good enough.
It stinks. And you traded for Kyle Kuzma 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Can we nominate that?
That's always my number one. Yeah. That is always my number one. I don't even know what it is that really makes. Honestly, I read the Kuz thing. I don't even understand fully why I'm just like so vehemently not into Kuzma. Like, I can't,
because he's not a serious basketball player.
Yeah, it's just like funny because he like was with the Lakers kind of, and then it's just like since then it's just kind of like withered away. What's your last one? You got the last pick.
I'm sort of cheating here.
That's fine.
But we haven't really talked about them. All of it by the Brooklyn Nets. You could have traded Cam Johnson for real stuff. Instead, you ended up taking 1 first-round pick and a salary dump, and now you have to deal with Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
I really don't have as much of a problem with using the 5 first-round picks as much as most people do. I know a lot of people thought that they should package them, try to move up. How are you going to have 5 rookies on the team? I get it. I also get just like taking 5 bites at the apple and just saying the hell with it. Maybe one of these guys pops. If we hit on 50% of them, that's probably a good result at the end of the day. I just hated all their picks. I didn't like their draft. I hated the draft. I didn't like a single one of their picks. Yeah. And I'm probably going to look wrong because chances are one of these guys is going to be decent. I didn't like the draft. I didn't like how they used their offseason. And they had, maybe more than anything, my biggest problem with how Brooklyn approached it, they had such an opportunity with their cap space. The only team with real cap space this summer. And the biggest thing in the NBA going into free agency was how is Brooklyn going to utilize their cap space? They have the entire NBA over a barrel because every team's going to be calling them, hey, we want this for a salary dump, all this. And it felt like they could come away with this offseason with like a haul of first-round picks.
They could have done a version of Thunder East. They really
Yeah,
could've.
exactly. And instead, they just use it all on Terrence Mann and Michael Porter Jr., and they don't really get anything out of it. It just felt like a really poor mismanagement of your resource there. I didn't understand why they used the cap space so early. I didn't understand the motivation. I would have just had the NBA fighting over it for weeks and holding up the entire market. I don't understand what the Brooklyn Nets did this summer. I don't get it.
Are you going to be more confused when they give Cam Thomas what feels like too big of a number? Even though the Cam Thomas doesn't have a market, it just feels like they might give him like a decent number. And I'm pretty hit or miss on Cam Thomas.
I'll be confused if they give him any number. I don't get it. Why would you sign him to more money?
Buckets.
See what the season looks like.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yep.
All right, honorable mention for me for worse is just the Bulls. The Bulls' existence. Not getting anything, even though Lonzo has the injury history, and giving Cleveland such an out and more flexibility just feels like really bad GMing on top of everything else. I don't really understand like why they agreed to that the further we've gotten away from it. Any honorable mentions for you?
No, that was really it.
You need shit on the Pelicans anymore?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Team we didn't get on that one team I liked the more I've actually thought about it, and I didn't like originally just as an honorable mention from the best. The Pistons. I actually really like the Pistons moves.
Yeah, Pistons fans seem upset, and I don't understand why. You added Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson. These are guys that are going to help your team. They make you better. I'm good.
Yeah, one of them. There's no one under federal investigation for gambling, so
that's also good.
Other last good move, and I say this sort of tongue in cheek, the fact that Mike Brown is hiring an associate head coach. So there's no like of the Rick Brunson stuff that was popping up at the end of last year. I think that's actually really good for the Knicks and their title chances next year. I'm like half kidding when I say that.
I like the Knicks offseason. I like Mike Brown as their coach. I like Yabu and Clarkson. These are moves that can definitely move. Not one move in a vacuum, but all together, this is the stuff that can move the needle in the Eastern Conference.
Surprised you didn't get Yabusele in there on your best. That's your guy.
I thought about it.
He's really good for what they're paying him. It's really good. It's really good money for a guy that can play real minutes for them.
They scrapped the bottom of the bargain bin and got two guys who are probably going to be in the top 8 of their rotation. That's a win. They had a good offseason.
Huge win. Them and Cleveland neck and neck as far as East odds for the title next year. It's going to be, I think, a great race between those two teams at the top. But until later this week, I'm Chris Manning. That's Wes Goldberg. Enjoy the hoops. We'll talk to you soon.